My mother-in-law demanded I change my wedding dress because it was too attention-grabbing, so I showed up in something that made her faint. Delphine had been orchestrating my life since the moment her son Thaddeus proposed. She chose our engagement ring, our wedding venue, even our honeymoon destination. When I protested, Thaddeus would shrug and say, "Mother knows best. She's been planning weddings for 40 years. What about planning my own life?" The dress became our final battlefield. I'd found it at a boutique in Paris during our engagement trip, a stunning Elie Saab creation with intricate beadwork that shimmered like starlight. It was ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves and a cathedral train that made me feel like royalty. When I tried it on, even the snooty French saleswoman gasped. Delphine's reaction was volcanic. "Absolutely not," she declared during our fitting appointment. "It's far too dramatic, too attention-seeking. A bride should compliment the ceremony, not commandeer it." "It's my wedding day," I said quietly, admiring myself in the three-way mirror. "It's our family's reputation," she snapped. "The Worthington name has standards." She'd already commissioned a replacement without consulting me, a conservative nightmare in heavy satin with long sleeves and a neckline that reached my collarbone. It looked like something a Victorian governess would wear to her own funeral. "This is more appropriate," she announced as the seamstress hung the monstrosity beside my beautiful gown. "Elegant, refined, suitable for a Worthington bride." That night, I called my great-aunt Isadora, the family rebel who'd scandalized everyone by becoming a burlesque dancer in the 1960s. "Darling, I have something that might interest you," she purred over the phone. "Remember the stories about my wedding to that Cuban musician? The one where great-grandmother fainted? The very one. My dress is still in perfect condition." "What color was it again?" "Scarlet red, darling. The color of revolution." The morning of the wedding, I stood in the bridal suite wearing Aunt Isadora's legendary gown. It was magnificent, deep crimson silk that hugged every curve, with a plunging neckline and a train that swept dramatically behind me. The dress that had caused a society scandal 50 years ago. My maid of honor whistled low. "Holy hell, you look incredible." "I feel incredible," I admitted, adjusting the fitted bodice. "Like myself for the first time in months." "Delphine's going to have a coronary. Good. Maybe it'll teach her some respect." When the cathedral doors opened, the collective intake of breath was deafening. I glided down that endless aisle like I owned the entire world, my scarlet dress flowing behind me like liquid fire. Camera flashes exploded. Someone's grandmother clutched her pearls. A child pointed and whispered loudly, "Mama, why is the princess wearing red?" Delphine's face cycled through shock, horror, and pure murderous rage before her eyes rolled back and she crumpled sideways into the pew. Her husband caught her just before she hit the marble floor. Thaddeus stood paralyzed at the altar, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The officiant dropped his prayer book, but I felt absolutely magnificent. After the ceremony, as paramedics revived Delphine with smelling salts and half the congregation gossiped frantically, Thaddeus cornered me in the vestry. "What were you thinking?" he hissed. "I was thinking about standing up for myself," I said calmly. "You humiliated my mother in front of everyone. Your mother tried to erase me completely." His face darkened with an expression I'd never seen before. "This marriage requires sacrifices." "Yes," I agreed. "And I'm done being the only one making them." That's when Delphine appeared in the doorway, her face ashen, but her eyes burning with fury. "I know exactly what you are," she whispered, pointing a trembling finger at me. "What's that supposed to mean?" Thaddeus demanded. Delphine's smile was arctic. "Ask your wife about the private investigator's report sitting on my desk." The blood in my veins turned to ice water. I felt the scarlet silk suddenly constricting around my chest like a corset pulled too tight. Thaddeus looked between his mother and me, confusion etched across his features. "What private investigator?" I managed to ask, though my voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Delphine stepped fully into the vestry, closing the door behind her with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot. Her pale pink mother-of-the-groom dress rustled as she moved, and I noticed her hands were still shaking slightly from whatever the paramedics had given her. "The one I hired 3 weeks after Thaddeus announced your engagement," she said, her voice gaining strength with every word. "Did you really think the Worthington family wouldn't conduct a thorough background check on someone trying to marry into our lineage?" My heart hammered against my ribs. I thought of all the secrets I'd buried, all the carefully constructed lies that had built the foundation of my new identity, the scholarship applications where I'd inflated my parents' income, the job references from companies that had never existed, the college transcripts I'd doctored to hide the semester I'd been expelled for academic dishonesty. But most of all, I thought about Memphis. "Mother, what are you talking about?" Thaddeus stepped closer to me, but his movements were protective rather than threatening. "What background check?" Delphine reached into her small beaded purse and withdrew a manila envelope, thick with documents. The paper crinkled as she held it up like evidence in a courtroom. "Would you like to tell him, or shall I?" she asked, her eyes never leaving my face. The vestry felt like it was shrinking around us. Stained glass windows cast jeweled light across the ancient stone walls, but the beauty felt mocking now. I could hear the distant sounds of our wedding reception beginning, champagne glasses clinking, the string quartet playing, guests already celebrating what they assumed was the happiest day of my life. "I don't know what you think you've discovered," I said carefully, "but Valentina Rossetti." Delphine's voice cut through my words like a blade. "Born in Memphis, Tennessee, daughter of Vincent Rossetti and Maria Santos Rossetti." Shall I continue? The fake name I'd used for the first 18 years of my life hung in the air between us. Thaddeus's brow furrowed as he processed what he'd just heard. "I don't understand," he said slowly. "Your name is Elena Worthington. Before that, it was Elena Chambers." "That's what she told you," Delphine said, opening the envelope and pulling out a stack of photographs. "But Elena Chambers never existed until 5 years ago." She handed the photos to Thaddeus. His face went white as he flipped through them. Pictures of me from my teenage years, unmistakably me but with darker hair and a different style of dress. Pictures of me standing outside a rundown apartment building in Memphis. Pictures of me with people Thaddeus had never seen before. "These were taken by the investigator last month," Delphine continued. "Would you like to see the police reports next? Or perhaps the court documents?" "Stop." The word came out louder than I'd intended, echoing off the vestry walls. Both Thaddeus and Delphine turned to stare at me. "Just stop." I reached for the photos in Thaddeus's hands. My fingers trembled as I looked at them. Evidence of a life I'd spent 5 years trying to forget. There I was at 17, standing outside Mama's corner market with grease-stained fingers and defiance in my eyes. There I was at 18, walking out of the Memphis courthouse with a sentence that should have ruined my life. Tell me this is some kind of mistake, Thaddeus said quietly. His voice held a note of pleading that broke something inside my chest. I could have lied. I could have claimed the photos were doctored, that Delphine had fabricated everything out of spite. For a moment, I considered weaving another elaborate story to cover the truth. But standing there in that scarlet dress, surrounded by the stone walls where generations of Worthingtons had been married, I realized I was tired of running from who I used to be. It's not a mistake, I said. The confession hung in the air like incense. Thaddeus set the photos down on a nearby table and turned to face me fully. Who are you? He asked. I looked at this man I'd promised to love and honor, this man whose family name I now carried, this man who'd never known that everything about our relationship was built on carefully constructed lies. My real name is Valentina Rossetti, I began. I was born in Memphis to a father who ran numbers for the Torino family and a mother who cleaned office buildings at night. When I was 17, my father was arrested for loan sharking and money laundering. The FBI offered me a deal. Testify against my father and his associates, and they'd help me disappear into witness protection. Thaddeus sank into one of the wooden chairs lining the vestry wall. The weight of my words seemed to physically push him down. I took the deal, I continued. I testified against my own father, sent him to prison for 15 years, and watched the FBI create Elena Chambers out of thin air. New birth certificate, new social security number, new life history. They relocated me to Chicago, gave me a scholarship to Northwestern under my new identity, and told me to never look back. Witness protection, Thaddeus whispered. You're in witness protection. Was, I corrected. I aged out of the program when I turned 23. But by then, Elena Chambers felt more real than Valentina Rossetti ever had. Delphine had been silent during my confession, but now she spoke up, her voice dripping with vindication. And you thought you could just marry into our family with this kind of baggage? The Worthington name represents 2 centuries of honor and respectability. The Worthington name represents 2 centuries of old money and covered-up scandals. I shot back, finding my courage again. Should I tell Thaddeus about your grandfather's involvement in the Chicago outfit? Or your uncle's conviction for tax evasion that the family paid to have expunged? Delphine's face went purple. How dare you? I did my research too, I said. The difference is, I don't pretend my family is something they're not. Thaddeus looked up at me with an expression I couldn't read. Why didn't you tell me? The simple question carried the weight of our entire relationship. I thought about all the nights we'd lain in bed sharing our deepest fears and dreams, all the times he'd asked about my family, and I deflected with vague stories about being orphaned young. All the moments when the truth had sat on the tip of my tongue, and I'd swallowed it down. Because I was terrified you'd leave, I admitted. Because I thought Elena Chambers was good enough for you, but Valentina Rossetti never would be. And now? I looked down at the scarlet silk pooling around my feet, thought about Great Aunt Isadora and her Cuban musician, thought about the courage it had taken her to wear this dress 50 years ago. Now I think maybe it's time you met the real me. The vestry door opened suddenly, making all 3 of us jump. My maid of honor, Cecilia, poked her head in, her face flushed with excitement. Sorry to interrupt, but the photographer wants to get some pictures before the light changes, and your guests are asking where the happy couple. She stopped mid-sentence, taking in the tense atmosphere. Is everything okay? We'll be out in a minute, I said, forcing a smile. Cecilia's eyes darted between the 3 of us, clearly sensing the undercurrent of drama, but she nodded and backed out of the room. The reception, Thaddeus said flatly. We have a reception to attend. We can call it off, I said quickly. Tell everyone there's been a family emergency. No, he stood up, straightening his tuxedo jacket. We're going to walk out there, smile for the cameras, and get through this evening. Then we're going to go home and figure out what happens next. Delphine started to protest, but Thaddeus held up a hand to stop her. Mother, you've said enough for one day. I suggest you go rejoin your guests and keep your mouth shut about what you've learned here. Thaddeus, you can't possibly be considering. I said that's enough. His voice carried an authority I'd never heard before. This is between my wife and me. My wife. Even after learning the truth, he'd still called me his wife. Delphine's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Finally, she stuffed the photographs back into the envelope, clutched it to her chest, and swept out of the vestry without another word. Thaddeus and I stood in silence for a long moment. The sounds of the reception drifted through the stone walls. Laughter, music, the celebration of a marriage that might already be over. Valentina, he said finally, testing the name on his tongue. Tina, I corrected. Everyone called me Tina. Tina? He nodded slowly. It suits you better than Elena, actually. Does it? Elena always seemed too perfect, too polished, like you were trying too hard to be someone you weren't. He met my eyes, which I suppose you were. A tear slipped down my cheek, and I quickly wiped it away, careful not to smudge my makeup. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I lied to you. Are you sorry you lied? Or are you sorry you got caught? The question hit me like a physical blow. I opened my mouth to give him an easy answer, then stopped. He deserved the truth now, even if it hurt. Both, I admitted. I'm sorry I lied because you deserved better. But I'm also sorry I got caught because I liked being Elena. I liked being the kind of woman who belonged in places like this. Thaddeus walked to the stained glass window and stared out at the cathedral grounds. His hands were clasped behind his back, and I could see the tension in his shoulders. My whole life, people have wanted to marry me for my money, my family name, my connections, he said quietly. I thought you were different. I thought you loved me for who I was, not what I represented. I do love you for who you are. He turned around. But you also love what I represent, don't you? The respectability, the clean slate, the chance to be someone new. I wanted to deny it, but the words stuck in my throat because he was right, at least partially. I'd fallen in love with Thaddeus, his kindness, his intelligence, his gentle sense of humor, but I'd also fallen in love with the life he offered. The chance to attend charity galas instead of hiding from bill collectors. The chance to shop for wedding dresses in Paris instead of stealing groceries to survive. Yes, I whispered. I love both. At least you're being honest now. Another silence stretched between us. I could hear the string quartet playing our first dance song, The Way You Look Tonight, and wondered if we'd ever dance to it again. What happens now? I asked. Thaddeus straightened his bow tie and offered me his arm. Now we go to our reception. We smile, we dance, we cut the cake, we play the part of the happy couple. And after that, After that, we figure out if Valentina Rossetti and Thaddeus Worthington can build something real together. I took his arm, feeling the strength of his muscles beneath the expensive fabric of his tuxedo. And if we can't, then we'll have one hell of a wedding album to remember what might have been. Despite everything, I almost smiled. This was the Thaddeus I'd fallen in love with, the one who could find humor even in the darkest moments. We walked out of the vestry together, arm in arm, facing the flash of cameras and the curious stares of our guests. But as we moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and posing for pictures, I couldn't shake the feeling that Delphine wasn't finished with me yet. I was right. The first sign of trouble came during the reception dinner. I was sitting at the head table, picking at my salmon and trying to maintain a conversation with Thaddeus's elderly great-aunt, when I noticed Delphine huddled in intense conversation with several other well-dressed women near the bar. Every few seconds, one of them would glance in my direction, their expressions ranging from curious to scandalized. Delphine was showing them something, documents, I realized with growing dread. She was sharing the contents of that manila envelope. "Excuse me," I murmured to Great Aunt Millicent, and made my way across the reception hall. The women scattered like birds when they saw me approaching, suddenly finding urgent reasons to refresh their drinks or visit the powder room. Only Delphine remained, standing beside a towering arrangement of white roses and baby's breath. "Lovely reception," she said with false sweetness. "Though I do think the color scheme is a bit bold." She gestured to my red dress, and I realized she was talking about more than just my fashion choice. "What did you tell them?" I asked quietly. "Just the truth. Isn't that what you wanted? No more lies? You promised Thaddeus you'd keep quiet." "I promised to keep quiet to Thaddeus. I never said anything about keeping quiet about you." Her smile was razor sharp. "The ladies were simply curious about the new addition to our social circle. I thought they deserved to know what kind of woman had married into the Worthington family." Panic fluttered in my chest. The Worthington social circle was small and tightly connected. If Delphine was spreading rumors about my past, it would only be a matter of hours before everyone knew. "You're destroying your own son's marriage," I said. "I'm protecting it. Better he learns what you are now than after you've had time to take half his assets in a divorce." I signed a prenup. Prenups can be contested, especially when one party has committed fraud. The word hung between us like a sword. Fraud. Had I committed fraud by marrying Thaddeus under a false identity? I wasn't sure, but I suspected Delphine had already consulted with lawyers about that very question. "You're unbelievable," I said. "I'm thorough. It's how the Worthington family has maintained its position for 2 centuries. I turned to walk away, but her next words stopped me cold. "Oh, and Valentina, you might want to check the local news tomorrow morning. I've heard some very interesting developments are coming to light about the Torino family investigation." My blood turned to ice. The Torino family case had been closed for 5 years. There was no reason for it to be back in the news unless someone had tipped off reporters about a key witness who was now living under a new identity in Chicago. I spun around to face her. "What did you do?" "I made a few phone calls, called in some favors." Amazing how quickly journalists become interested in a story when they learn that a federal witness has violated the terms of their protection agreement by failing to disclose their true identity on legal documents. "I didn't violate anything. I aged out of the program." "Did you?" "Because according to my sources, you were supposed to report any major life changes, like marriage, to your federal handler. Marrying under a false identity without notification could be considered a breach of your original agreement." My knees nearly buckled. She was right. In all my excitement about becoming Elena Chambers permanently, I'd forgotten about that clause in my witness protection agreement. I was supposed to maintain minimal contact with my federal handler for life, reporting any major changes that might affect my security or the security of the ongoing investigation. I'd been so eager to leave Valentina Rossetti behind that I'd never reported my engagement, let alone my marriage. "You're going to destroy me," I whispered. "You destroyed yourself the moment you decided to lie to my son." Delphine smoothed her pink dress and picked up her champagne glass. "Enjoy the rest of your reception, dear. It may be the last party you attend as a Worthington." She glided away, leaving me standing alone beside the flower arrangement, the scent of roses suddenly cloying and overwhelming. I needed air. I needed space to think. I pushed through the crowd of guests, ignoring their attempts to congratulate me or pull me into conversations, and escaped onto the terrace outside the reception hall. The evening air was cool against my overheated skin. Below me, the city lights twinkled like fallen stars, and I could see couples strolling through the hotel gardens. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful, while my world was crashing down around me. "There you are." I turned to find Thaddeus approaching, 2 glasses of champagne in his hands. He offered me one, and I took it gratefully, though my hands were shaking too badly to drink. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said. "Worse. I've seen your mother." Thaddeus set his champagne glass on the stone balustrade and studied my face. "What happened?" I told him everything. About Delphine spreading rumors to the other guests, about her threats regarding my witness protection agreement, about the reporters who might already be digging into my past. "She's going to destroy both of us," I finished. "If this story breaks, the scandal will follow your family for years." Thaddeus was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and measured. "My mother has always been very good at finding people's weaknesses and exploiting them. It's how she's maintained her position in society for so long." "Are you defending her?" "No, I'm explaining her." He turned to face me. "But here's what she doesn't understand. I don't care about the scandal. You should. Your business relationships, your social standing, will survive. They always do. The truly wealthy have short memories when it comes to scandal, especially when there's money to be made." "Thaddeus, let me finish." He took my hands in his, champagne glasses forgotten. "My mother thinks she's protecting me, but she's wrong about what I need protection from. I don't need protection from your past. I need protection from people who would use that past to manipulate and control me. Like her. Like her." Hope flickered in my chest. "So what do? We call her bluff. We control the narrative before she can." "How?" Thaddeus smiled, and for the first time all evening, it looked genuinely happy. "We tell our own story first." An hour later, I stood in front of a bathroom mirror in the hotel's bridal suite, staring at my reflection. The scarlet dress that had seemed so bold and defiant earlier now felt like armor. My makeup was still perfect despite the evening's drama, and my hair remained elegantly styled. I looked like a woman who belonged at a society wedding, but in a few minutes, I was going to reveal that appearance was just another carefully constructed lie. Cecilia knocked on the bathroom door. "Tina, are you ready?" Tina. She'd switched to my real name without hesitation when I'd told her the truth. It was a small kindness that meant more than she could possibly know. As ready as I'll ever be. I opened the door to find Cecilia, Thaddeus, and his cousin Reginald, a successful PR executive who'd agreed to help us manage the situation. They'd set up a makeshift command center in the bridal suite, complete with laptops, phones, and a carefully crafted press statement. The journalist from the Tribune is standing by, Reginald said, checking his watch. She's agreed to hold the story until morning if we give her an exclusive interview tonight. And the other reporters? We'll release a general statement to them simultaneously. Control the timing, control the narrative. I nodded, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. What about the guests downstairs? Already handled, Thaddeus said. I made an announcement that you weren't feeling well and had retired for the evening. Most people have started to leave. And your mother? His expression darkened. My mother is no longer welcome at family functions. Thaddeus, you can't cut her off completely. She's your mother. She crossed a line tonight. There are consequences for that. The finality in his voice told me this wasn't up for discussion. Delphine had overplayed her hand, and now she was facing the wrath of the son she'd tried to protect. The journalist arrived 30 minutes later, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s named Patricia Hernandez who specialized in investigative reporting. She set up a small recording device on the coffee table and opened her notebook. Mrs. Worthington, she began, I understand you have some revelations about your past that you'd like to share. Mrs. Worthington. Even after everything, the name still felt strange on my tongue. Please call me Tina, I said. And yes, I do. For the next hour, I told Patricia everything. About growing up in Memphis, about my father's criminal activities, about the night the FBI knocked on our door and offered me a deal I couldn't refuse, about testifying against my own family, about entering witness protection, about creating Elena Chambers and leaving Valentina Rossetti behind. Patricia's questions were sharp but fair. She wanted to know about the emotional toll of betraying my father, about the challenges of building a new identity, about how I'd managed to maintain the deception for so long. And Mr. Worthington, she said, turning to Thaddeus, you had no knowledge of your wife's true identity? None, he replied. But I can't say I'm entirely surprised. There was always something guarded about Elena, something that suggested she was protecting herself from a painful past. Are you angry about the deception? Thaddeus looked at me, and I saw nothing but love in his eyes. I'm hurt that she didn't trust me with the truth sooner, but I understand why she felt she had to protect herself. And your family's reaction? My family will adapt. Those who truly care about me will accept my wife for who she is. Those who don't, he shrugged, weren't worth keeping around anyway. Patricia nodded, scribbling notes. Mrs. Worthington, there are some who might say you committed fraud by marrying under a false identity. How do you respond to that? I'd been dreading this question, but I answered honestly. Elena Chambers is my legal name, given to me by the federal government. I didn't forge documents or steal someone else's identity. I lived under the name that was assigned to me for my protection. But you didn't disclose your true history to your husband. No, I didn't. And that was wrong, but it wasn't illegal. What about your witness protection agreement? Sources suggest you may have violated the terms by failing to report your marriage. This was the question that could destroy me. I'd consulted with a lawyer earlier in the evening, and the answer wasn't clear-cut. Technically, I should have reported my engagement to my federal handler. Failing to do so could potentially be considered a breach of contract. I may have made an error in judgment, I said carefully. If so, I'm prepared to face the consequences. Patricia nodded and turned off her recording device. I think I have everything I need. The story will run in tomorrow's morning edition, online by midnight tonight. After she left, the four of us sat in exhausted silence. Through the suite's windows, I could see the last of the wedding guests leaving the hotel, their voices carrying up from the courtyard below. Well, Reginald said finally, that's done. Now we wait and see how it plays out. What's the worst-case scenario? I asked. Federal investigation into your witness protection compliance. Possible charges if they determine you deliberately violated your agreement. Media circus for a few weeks while everyone picks apart your story. And the best case? The story runs, there's some initial buzz, and then everyone moves on to the next scandal. Most people have short attention spans when it comes to other people's drama. I hoped he was right. The story broke at 11:47 p.m., just as we were finally settling into our honeymoon suite. The Tribune's website led with the headline, Society Bride's Secret Past, From Witness Protection to Worthington Wedding. Within an hour, it had been picked up by 3 other Chicago papers and 2 national news sites. By morning, my phone had 17 missed calls from reporters and 43 text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Thaddeus and I ordered room service for breakfast and spent the morning reading the coverage. Most of it was fairly sympathetic, focusing on the courage it took to testify against organized crime and the challenges of rebuilding a life in witness protection. But there were exceptions. A conservative blog called me a calculating social climber who deceived an honorable family. A gossip site speculated about what other secrets I might be hiding. And a particularly nasty tabloid piece suggested that Thaddeus was either criminally naive or in on the con. Don't read that garbage, Thaddeus said, taking my phone away. It's designed to get clicks, not report facts. But what if people believe it? Then those people don't know me very well, do they? My phone rang, displaying a number I didn't recognize. I was about to decline the call when I noticed the area code, 901, Memphis. I have to take this, I told Thaddeus. Valentina? The voice on the other end was gravelly, older than I remembered. Daddy? Saw you on the news, baby girl. Looking real good in that red dress. My father's voice after 5 years of silence hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto the edge of the hotel bed, suddenly feeling like I was 17 again, standing in a federal courthouse while he stared at me with disappointed eyes. How did you get this number? Wasn't too hard to track down once your face was all over the internet. Amazing what people will tell you if you ask nice. You're supposed to be in prison. Got out 18 months ago. Good behavior, overcrowding, legal technicalities. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. I'd made a point of never checking on his case after I testified. The FBI had advised against it, and I'd been too afraid of what I might find. What do you want? I asked. To talk to my daughter. It's been a long time. We talked plenty during your trial. That wasn't talking, Valentina. That was you reading from a script the feds wrote for you. I told the truth. You told their truth. Big difference. Thaddeus was watching me with concern, clearly able to tell from my side of the conversation that something was wrong. I held up a hand to let him know I was okay, though I wasn't sure that was true. Daddy, I can't do this right now. When can you do it? Because I got some things to say and I think you need to hear them. I don't think... Your mama's sick, Valentina. The words stopped me cold. My mother had been notably absent from my thoughts over the past 5 years. I'd told myself it was easier that way, a clean break from my old life. But hearing that she was ill brought back a flood of memories I tried to suppress. What's wrong with her? Cancer. Started in her lungs, spread to her liver. Doctors say she's got maybe 6 months. I closed my eyes, feeling the walls of my carefully constructed new life starting to crumble. Why are you telling me this? Because she's been asking for you, every day since she got diagnosed. Where's my Valentina? She says. Why won't my baby come see me? I can't come back to Memphis, you know that. Why? Because you're too good for us now? Because you got yourself a rich husband and a fancy new name? Because the people you were involved with might still want me dead, I snapped. Because testifying against the Torino family doesn't exactly come with an expiration date on the threats. The Torinos are finished, have been for years. Most of them are dead or in prison, and the rest scattered to the wind after your testimony brought down their whole operation. How do I know you're telling the truth? Because I'm the one telling you, and whatever else you think about me, I never lied to you about something important. He was right about that. My father had many faults. He was a criminal, a gambler, and a man who'd put his family in danger with his poor choices, but he'd never been a liar, at least not to me. I need to think about this, I said. Don't think too long, baby girl. Your mama doesn't have the luxury of time. The line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long moment, processing what I'd just learned. My mother was dying, and she wanted to see me. My father was out of prison and somehow had access to my personal information. The past I'd tried so hard to bury was clawing its way back to the surface. Who was that? Thaddeus asked gently. My father. He's out of prison. Thaddeus sat down beside me on the bed. What did he want? To tell me my mother is dying. I explained the conversation, watching Thaddeus's face as he processed this new development. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Do you want to see her? He asked finally. I don't know. Part of me does, but you're afraid. Terrified. Not just of seeing her, but of what it means. If I go back to Memphis, even for a visit, it validates everything Delphine said about me, that I'm still connected to that world, that I can never really escape it. Or it shows that you're strong enough to face your past on your own terms. I looked at my husband, this man who'd learned the truth about me less than 24 hours ago and was still sitting beside me, offering comfort instead of judgment. Would you come with me? I asked. If you want me to. Even knowing that we might run into some very unsavory people from my father's old life. Especially then. You shouldn't have to face that alone. I leaned against his shoulder, feeling some of the tension leave my body. How did I get so lucky? By having the courage to wear a red dress to your own wedding. Despite everything, I laughed. That seems like a lifetime ago. It was 12 hours ago. Same thing. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Saw the news. Proud of you for telling the truth. If you need anything, call me. Special Agent Morrison. Agent Morrison had been my federal handler during my time in witness protection. The fact that he was reaching out now couldn't be a coincidence. I showed the text to Thaddeus. I should call him. Good idea. Better to be proactive than reactive. I dialed the number, and Agent Morrison answered on the first ring. Tina, I was hoping I'd hear from you. Agent Morrison. I assume you've seen the news coverage. I have. I'll be honest. I'm disappointed you didn't contact me before your engagement. That was supposed to be part of our ongoing arrangement. I know. I messed up. Yes, you did. But it's not catastrophic. The most important thing is that you're safe and that our investigation remains secure. Am I in trouble? Officially? I need to file a report about the protocol breach. Unofficially? I think you made a reasonable choice to build a normal life. The witness protection program isn't designed to keep people isolated forever. Relief flooded through me. So no charges? No charges. But I do need to update our files with your current status. And I should probably brief you on some developments in the Torino case. What kind of developments? The kind we should discuss in person. Are you still in Chicago? Yes, but I might be traveling to Memphis soon. My mother is ill. There was a pause. I'd advise against that trip. Why? Because some of the people connected to your father's case have been asking questions about you recently. Nothing threatening, but enough to put us on alert. My blood went cold. What kind of questions? Where you are, what name you're using, whether you have any ongoing contact with federal law enforcement. The kind of questions that suggest someone is looking for you. Who? We're not sure yet. But I'd feel better if you stayed put until we can get a clearer picture of the situation. I looked at Thaddeus, who was watching my side of the conversation with growing concern. Agent Morrison, my mother is dying. If someone is looking for me, wouldn't it be better to meet them on my terms rather than wait for them to find me? Normally, yes, but Memphis is their territory. You'd be walking into a situation where they have all the advantages. Then what do you suggest? Give me 48 hours to make some calls, see what I can find out. If it's safe, I'll give you an escort to Memphis. If it's not, we'll figure out another way for you to see your mother. An escort? Federal protection. Just to be safe. I closed my eyes, feeling the walls of my new life crumbling a little more. Just 24 hours ago, my biggest worry had been whether Delphine would approve of my dress. Now I was discussing federal protection and potential threats from organized crime figures. Okay, I said. 48 hours. Good. And Tina, congratulations on your marriage. From what I've read, your husband seems like a good man. He is. Then you're lucky. Not everyone gets a second chance at happiness. After I hung up, Thaddeus and I sat in silence for a while, processing everything that had happened. Our honeymoon suite, which had seemed so romantic just hours earlier, now felt like a bunker where we were hiding from the world. Well, Thaddeus said finally, marriage to you is certainly going to be interesting. Are you having second thoughts? About the marriage? No. About skipping our actual honeymoon to potentially travel into a dangerous situation in Memphis? Maybe a few. We could still go to Italy like we planned. Pretend none of this is happening. Thaddeus turned to face me fully. Is that what you want? I thought about it seriously. We could board our plane to Rome in 6 hours, spend 2 weeks touring vineyards and museums, and come back to deal with everything after our honeymoon. It would be the easy choice, the safe choice. But it would also be running away again, and I was tired of running. No, I said. I want to face this. All of it. Then that's what we'll do. Even if it means our honeymoon is spent in Memphis instead of Italy, Memphis has barbecue. Italy will always be there. I kissed him then, pouring all my gratitude and love into that moment. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't be facing it alone. The next morning brought more media attention, but also some unexpected support. Cecilia called to tell me that 3 of my Northwestern sorority sisters had given statements to reporters defending my character. My former boss at the art gallery where I'd worked part-time had told a journalist that I was one of the most honest and hardworking people she'd ever employed. Even more surprisingly, Thaddeus's cousin Reginald called with news that several prominent Chicago families had reached out offering their support. Turns out, he said, a lot of people admire what you did. Testifying against organized crime at 17 takes guts. You're being seen as a hero, not a villain. And the witness protection angle plays well too. People understand why you needed to hide your identity. The consensus seems to be that you did what you had to do to survive. What about the society crowd? The Worthington family's social circle? Reginald paused. Mixed reactions there. Some people are scandalized, others are intrigued. But here's the thing. Thaddeus comes from old money, really old money. That buys a lot of forgiveness in these circles. And Delphine has been conspicuously absent from all social media and hasn't returned calls from reporters. I suspect she's realizing she may have overplayed her hand. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang with Delphine's contact information. Should I answer it? I asked Thaddeus. Might as well. Get it over with. Valentina. Delphine's voice was crisp and controlled, giving nothing away. Mrs. Worthington, I think we need to talk. I think we've said enough to each other. Please. I'd like the chance to clarify some things. I looked at Thaddeus, who shrugged. His expression suggested he didn't particularly care what his mother had to say, but he wasn't going to stop me from listening. Where? I asked. The club. 1 hour. She hung up without waiting for my response. The club was the exclusive Chicago Women's Club where Delphine had been a member for 30 years. It was the kind of place where old money went to drink tea and discuss charity functions while subtly destroying each other's reputations. I chose my outfit carefully, a navy blue Chanel suit that Elena Chambers had bought for job interviews, but that Valentina Rossetti had never been able to afford. I wanted to look like I belonged there, even though we all knew I didn't. Delphine was waiting in the club's library, seated in a leather wingback chair with a cup of tea cooling on the side table. She looked older than she had at the wedding, more fragile somehow. Thank you for coming, she said as I settled into the chair across from her. I'm here. Talk. I owe you an apology. The words surprised me. I'd expected threats, ultimatums, demands that I annul the marriage. An apology was the last thing I'd anticipated. For what? Specifically, for the way I handled things yesterday, for sharing private information about you with others, for trying to manipulate the situation to get what I wanted, which was to protect my son from what I perceived as a threat to his happiness and security. And now, Delphine picked up her teacup, then set it down without drinking. Now I realize I may have been wrong about what constitutes a threat. How so? I've spent the morning reading every article about you I could find. Do you know what I discovered? I waited for her to continue. Every person interviewed about you, from college professors to former employers to your maid of honor, says the same thing, that you're kind, hardworking, and fiercely loyal to the people you care about. People can be wrong. One person can be wrong. A dozen people speaking independently rarely are. She leaned forward. I also spoke to someone who knows about the Torino case. Who? Federal Judge Catherine Montrose. She presided over several of the trials that resulted from your testimony. Do you know what she told me? I shook my head. She said your testimony was crucial in bringing down one of the most dangerous organized crime families in the Midwest. She said you saved lives by having the courage to speak up, even though you knew it would destroy your relationship with your father. The praise should have felt good, but instead it just made me tired. It doesn't change the fact that I lied to your son. No, it doesn't, but it does change my understanding of why you felt you had to lie. Delphine stood up and walked to one of the library's tall windows, looking out at the club's manicured gardens. I've been thinking about something Judge Montrose said. She told me that the bravest people are often the ones who've been forced to make impossible choices at a young age. That trauma can either break people or make them incredibly strong. What's your point? My point is that I spent so much time worrying about protecting Thaddeus from your past that I failed to see how that past might actually be an asset. An asset? She turned back to face me. You're a survivor, Valentina. You faced down organized crime, rebuilt your life from nothing, and managed to earn the love and respect of people who had no idea about your history. Those aren't the qualities of someone who would hurt my son. So what are you saying? I'm saying I was wrong. About you, about the threat you represent, about what's best for Thaddeus. She paused. And I'm asking if you can forgive an old woman's misguided attempt to protect her child. I stared at her, trying to process this complete reversal. 12 hours ago, she'd been threatening to destroy my life. Now she was asking for forgiveness. Why the change of heart? Because I saw the news footage of Thaddeus defending you to reporters this morning. I haven't seen him that passionate about anything in years. And because I realized that if I continue down this path, I'm going to lose my son completely. So this is about self-preservation, partially, but it's also about realizing that I might have been looking at this situation completely wrong. I considered her words carefully. Delphine Worthington was not the type of woman who admitted mistakes easily. For her to be sitting here, offering an apology, meant she was either genuinely remorseful or very good at strategic thinking, probably both. What do you want from me? I asked. A chance to start over, to get to know the real you instead of the version I constructed in my head. And if I say no, then you say no. I'll respect Thaddeus's choice and try to maintain a civil relationship for his sake. I thought about Agent Morrison's warning, about the potential threat still lurking in Memphis, about all the ways my past could still complicate our future. Mrs. Worthington, Delphine, please. Delphine, I appreciate the apology, but you should know that yesterday's revelations might not be the end of the complications. There are still people from my old life who might cause problems. What kind of problems? I told her about my father's call, about Agent Morrison's warnings, about the possibility that someone was looking for me. When I finished, Delphine was quiet for a long moment. You're going to Memphis, she said finally. It wasn't a question. Probably, despite the risks. Because your mother is dying, because she's dying, and because I need to face whatever is waiting for me there. I can't keep running from my past. Does Thaddeus know about the potential danger? He knows. He's planning to come with me. Delphine nodded slowly. Then you'll need security, professional security. The FBI is handling that. The FBI will provide basic protection. But if you're walking into a situation where organized crime figures might be involved, you need people who understand that world. What are you suggesting? The Worthington family has connections. Security firms that specialize in high-risk situations. People who can assess threats and neutralize them before they become problems. That's generous, but it's not generosity. It's practicality. If something happens to you in Memphis, it affects my son. And despite our rocky introduction, you're family now. Family. The word hung in the air between us. I'd spent so many years without a real family that I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to have someone willing to protect you. Why are you doing this? I asked. Because I saw how Thaddeus looked at you yesterday when he thought you might be in trouble. I haven't seen him care about anything that much since his father died. The mention of Thaddeus's father surprised me. He rarely talked about his dad, who died of a heart attack when Thaddeus was in college. He really loved him, I said. Worshipped him. Charles was everything Thaddeus aspired to be. Brilliant, principled, kind. When he died, something went out of Thaddeus. He became more cautious, more reserved. And now I see flashes of the man he used to be. The way he defended you to reporters. The way he's willing to walk into a dangerous situation for you. That's the son I remember. I felt tears pricking at the corners of my— I don't want to get hurt because of me. Then let me help you make sure he doesn't. 2 hours later, I was back in our hotel suite with Thaddeus, telling him about my conversation with his mother. She wants to hire us security? He asked, clearly skeptical. Professional protection for the trip to Memphis. People who understand organized crime and how to deal with it. And you trust her motives? I think she's genuinely trying to make amends. And I think she's smart enough to realize that helping us is the best way to protect you. Thaddeus walked to the window and stared out at the Chicago skyline. It would be helpful to have backup beyond what the FBI provides. So you think we should accept? I think we should consider it. But I want to meet these security people first. Understand what we're getting into. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Morrison. Update. Initial inquiries suggest the interest in your whereabouts may be coming from your father's former associates, not the Torino family. Less dangerous, but still worth caution. Can you delay Memphis trip by 24 hours while we gather more intel? I showed the text to Thaddeus. Former associates of your father, he mused. That could mean a lot of things. Most of them not good, but potentially manageable with the right preparation. I texted Agent Morrison back. Can delay 24 hours. What kind of former associates? His response came quickly. Low-level operators who worked with your father on illegal gambling operations, likely motivated by curiosity rather than revenge, but we want to be sure. The distinction was important. People seeking revenge would be dangerous and unpredictable. People motivated by curiosity might just want to see how little Valentina Rossetti had turned out, especially after seeing her face all over the news. Gambling associates, I told Thaddeus. Morrison thinks they're just curious. Curious about what? Probably about whether I'm still the same girl who used to count cards at underground poker games to help my father pay off his debts. Thaddeus turned from the window, eyebrows raised. You counted cards? Among other things. I was good with numbers, and Daddy needed the help. I told myself it wasn't really cheating since I wasn't using any devices or working with Confederates. How old were you? Started when I was 15, stopped when I turned 17 and realized I was going to end up dead or in prison if I kept going. Jesus, Tina. I know. It wasn't exactly a normal childhood. That's not what I meant. He came over and sat beside me on the bed. I meant Jesus, you were just a kid. You shouldn't have been put in that position. The sympathy in his voice almost undid me. I'd spent so many years feeling guilty about my involvement in my father's illegal activities that I'd never really considered myself a victim. But hearing Thaddeus say it made me realize how young and scared I'd been. Anyway, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. If these people are just curious about me, it's probably safe to go to Memphis, especially with proper security. And if they're more than curious, then we deal with that when it happens. That evening, Delphine arranged for us to meet with Marcus Chen, the head of Whitmore Security, a firm that specialized in protecting high-profile clients in dangerous situations. Marcus was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with the kind of quiet competence that comes from years of military training. He listened to our situation without interruption, asked a few pointed questions about the potential threats, and then outlined his recommendations. Basic package would be 2 operatives, he said. One with you at all times, one providing advanced security and intelligence gathering. We'd coordinate with the FBI but maintain our own parallel security assessment. What kind of intelligence gathering? Thaddeus asked. Background checks on anyone who might pose a threat. Surveillance of locations you plan to visit. Real-time monitoring of chatter in the criminal community about your presence. And if there's an actual threat, then we escalate to full protection protocols. Multiple operatives, armored transport, safe house capabilities. Cost? Delphine asked. Marcus quoted a figure that made me wince, but Delphine nodded without hesitation. When can you start? She asked. We can have advanced people in Memphis by tomorrow morning. Full team in place within 48 hours. I looked at Thaddeus, who nodded. Okay, I said. Let's do it. The next morning, I called my father back. Daddy, it's me, Valentina. I was hoping you'd call. I'm coming to Memphis, but I need some guarantees. What kind of guarantees? That it's safe, that I'm not walking into a situation where people want to hurt me. I told you, baby girl. The Torinos are finished. There's no organized threat. What about unorganized threats? People who might have grudges about what happened 5 years ago? There was a pause. There's some curiosity. People who knew you before wondering how you turned out, but nothing dangerous. How can you be sure? Because I still got ears in that community. People tell me things. If there was real danger, I'd know about it. And the people asking questions about me? Another pause. Longer this time. How do you know about that? The FBI keeps tabs on these things. Who are they, Daddy? Old friends of mine. People who worked some of the same operations back in the day. They seen you on the news and got curious. What kind of curious? The kind where they want to see if Vincent Rossetti's little girl really did land on her feet or if it's all just smoke and mirrors. And what do you think? I think you done real good for yourself. I think you made the right choice, even if it hurt at the time. The admission surprised me. My father had never said anything like that before. Are you proud of me, Daddy? Proud as hell, baby girl. Even if I couldn't say it before. That afternoon, Agent Morrison called with an update. We've identified the people asking questions about you, he said. 3 individuals who worked with your father on gambling operations. Joey Castellano, Maria Santos, who I believe is a distant relative, and someone called Tommy the Fish. I remember them, I said. They used to come to the house sometimes. Our assessment is that they pose minimal risk. Castellano is running a legitimate auto repair shop now. Santos works for a nonprofit organization. Tommy the Fish. He paused. Well, Tommy's still Tommy, but he's small time now. Runs card games in the back of a restaurant. Nothing major. So it's safe to go? As safe as these things ever are. We'll have someone watching from a distance, just in case. That evening, Thaddeus and I had dinner with Delphine at her penthouse apartment. It was the first time I'd seen her home, and it was exactly what I'd expected. Tasteful, expensive, and slightly intimidating. But Delphine herself seemed different. More relaxed, more genuine. She asked me questions about my childhood that weren't designed to trap me, shared stories about Thaddeus's father that made him smile, and even complimented my choice of wine. You know, she said over dessert, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about the Worthington family having our own covered-up scandals. I shouldn't have said that, I replied. I was angry. No, you were right. Every old family has secrets. The difference is yours are in the past and you've paid the price for them. Some of ours are still ongoing. Thaddeus looked up from his creme brulee. What do you mean? I mean your Uncle Theodore's gambling debts, your cousin Patricia's drug problem, your great-uncle's tax evasion that we're still paying lawyers to keep quiet. Mother, the point is, she continued, Valentina's honesty about her past makes her more trustworthy than half our relatives, not less. It was a startling admission from a woman who'd built her identity around maintaining appearances. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Wait until we get you safely back from Memphis. The next morning, we flew to Memphis on a private jet that Delphine had chartered. Marcus Chen and his partner, a serious woman named Amanda Rodriguez, sat in the back of the plane, quietly reviewing intelligence reports and coordinating with their advance team. As the plane descended toward Memphis International Airport, I looked out at the city where I'd spent the first 18 years of my life. From the air, it looked smaller than I remembered, less threatening. Just another southern city with its mix of urban sprawl and green spaces. But I knew that perspective was deceptive. Down there were streets where I'd learned to count cards, neighborhoods where my father's reputation had protected me from some dangers while exposing me to others. People who remembered Valentina Rossetti and might have opinions about what she'd become. Thaddeus reached over and took my hand. You okay? Nervous. It's been 5 years since I've been here, and now you're coming back as a completely different person. Am I? Sometimes I wonder if Elena Chambers was just an elaborate costume I wore to hide who I really am. Maybe she was. But costumes can become reality if you wear them long enough. The plane touched down with barely a bump. Through the small window, I could see Marcus's advance team waiting near a black SUV with tinted windows. Welcome home, Valentina, I whispered to myself. It was time to find out if I could reconcile the girl I'd been with the woman I'd become. The ride from the airport to my parents' neighborhood took us through parts of Memphis I'd forgotten existed. We passed Beale Street, where tourists wandered between blues clubs and barbecue joints. We drove by the university where I'd once dreamed of studying before reality intervened. We crossed through Midtown, where young professionals lived in converted warehouses and trendy apartments. And then we entered the neighborhood where I'd grown up. It looked exactly the same. Rows of small houses with front porches, corner stores with security bars on the windows, and teenage boys hanging around parking lots with nothing better to do. The sight of it brought back a flood of memories, both good and bad. This is it, I told our driver as we pulled up in front of a pale yellow house with peeling paint and a chain-link fence. My childhood home looked smaller than I remembered, shabbier. The front porch where I used to sit and read was sagging slightly, and the small front yard was mostly weeds now. Marcus spoke into his earpiece, then turned to us. All clear. Advance team has been watching the house for 2 hours. Your father is inside alone. No unusual activity in the neighborhood. Unusual how? Thaddeus asked. Cars that don't belong, people watching the house, anyone who might be waiting for Mrs. Worthington to arrive. We climbed out of the SUV, and I felt like I was stepping into a different world. The air smelled of magnolia blossoms and urban decay. Somewhere nearby, someone was frying chicken, and I could hear children playing in a backyard. I walked up the cracked sidewalk to the front door, Thaddeus beside me and Marcus a few steps behind. Before I could knock, the door opened. My father stood in the doorway, and for a moment I didn't recognize him. He'd aged more than 5 years should account for. His hair had gone completely gray, and his face was thinner, more lined. But his eyes were the same, dark brown and intelligent, with a hint of sadness that had always been there. Hello, Daddy, I said. Hello, baby girl. He opened his arms, and after a moment's hesitation, I stepped into them. He smelled like Old Spice and cigarettes, exactly like I remembered. You look good, he said, stepping back to examine me. Real good. That's a nice dress. I was wearing a simple black shirt dress that probably cost more than he'd made in a month back when I was growing up. I felt suddenly self-conscious about the obvious signs of my new prosperity. Thank you. You look, I struggled for something honest but kind to say. You look tired. Been a long few years, he admitted. But better now that you're here. He turned to Thaddeus, extending his hand. You must be the husband. I'm Vincent. Thaddeus Worthington. It's good to meet you, sir. Sir? My father smiled for the first time since we'd arrived. I like him already. We followed him into the house, and I was struck by how little had changed. The same worn furniture, the same pictures on the walls, the same feeling of economic struggle that had defined my childhood. But something was different too. The house felt cleaner, more organized. The coffee table that used to be covered with betting slips and empty beer bottles now held medical pamphlets and prescription bottles. Where's Mama? I asked. Resting. The chemo wipes are out pretty good, but she's awake and waiting to see you. He led us down the narrow hallway to my parents' bedroom. The door was ajar, and I could hear the soft whir of an oxygen concentrator. Maria, my father called softly. She's here. Send her in, came the weak reply. I pushed the door open and stepped into the room. My mother was lying in bed, propped up on pillows, wearing a pink nightgown I'd never seen before. She looked so small, so fragile that I almost gasped. Her beautiful black hair was gone, replaced by a colorful headscarf. Her face was pale and gaunt, but her eyes, the same warm brown eyes I'd inherited, lit up when she saw me. Mija, she whispered, using the Spanish endearment she'd called me as a child. I went to her bedside and took her hand, which felt like bird bones wrapped in tissue paper. Hi, Mama. Look at you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. So beautiful. So elegant. Tears were running down my cheeks now. I'd forgotten how much I'd missed her voice, her accent, the way she'd always made me feel loved even when everything else was falling apart. I'm so sorry I stayed away, I said. No sorry. You did what you had to do. I understand. But you should have lived your life. And look, she gestured weakly at my dress, my jewelry, my obvious prosperity. You did good, Mija. Real good. Thaddeus appeared in the doorway. Should I wait outside? No, my mother said, struggling to sit up a little straighter. Come, let me meet the man who stole my daughter's heart. Thaddeus approached the bed carefully, clearly moved by my mother's fragile condition. Mrs. Rossetti, it's an honor to meet you. Tina talks about you often. It was a gentle lie. I rarely talked about my mother because it hurt too much, but it was exactly the right thing to say. Tina, my mother repeated, smiling. That's better than all these fancy names. You call her Tina? I do now. Good. She was always my Tina. We spent the next hour in that small bedroom, talking about safe topics. My mother's garden, now being tended by a neighbor. Thaddeus's work, described in terms she could understand. Our wedding, with careful editing to remove the drama. My mother told us about her diagnosis, her treatment, her hopes of seeing spring again. She was matter-of-fact about her prognosis in a way that broke my heart. The doctors, they say maybe 6 months, she said. But I think maybe less. I can feel it, you know? The tiredness is getting stronger. Don't talk like that, I said. It's okay, mija. I'm not afraid. I just wanted to see you one more time. Make sure you were really okay. I'm okay, mama. I'm more than okay. I can see that. You got good man, good life. That's all a mother wants. When she started to get tired, my father suggested we let her rest. She made me promise to come back the next day, and I assured her I would. And bring him, she said, nodding toward Thaddeus. I like him. Outside her room, my father walked us to the kitchen and put on a pot of coffee. How long? I asked quietly. Doctor says maybe 2 months, maybe 4. She's tougher than she looks, but he shrugged helplessly. Why didn't you call me sooner? Because she didn't want me to. Said you had your own life now, didn't need to be dragged back into our problems. Her dying isn't a problem, Daddy. It's my mother. I know that. You know that. But she's got this idea that she don't want to be a burden. Thaddeus, who'd been quietly observing our family dynamics, spoke up. Is there anything we can do? Better doctors, experimental treatments? My father looked at him with surprise. That's generous of you, son, but we already tried all that. The cancer's too far along. What about comfort care? Making sure she has everything she needs. The insurance covers what it covers. The rest, he gestured around the modest kitchen. We make do. I looked at my husband and knew we were thinking the same thing. Money couldn't buy my mother more time, but it could buy her comfort, dignity, and peace of mind. Let us help, I said. Tina, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. We spent the next hour discussing practical matters. Private nurses to help with my mother's care. A hospital bed for the living room so she could be part of family activities. A cleaning service to maintain the house. Small comforts that would make her remaining time easier. My father protested at first, his pride warring with his love for my mother. But eventually he accepted our help, and I could see the relief in his eyes. There's something else, he said, as we were preparing to leave. About those people who've been asking about you. The gambling associates? Yeah, Joey Castellano wants to see you. Says he's got something that belongs to you. I felt a chill run down my spine. What kind of something? He wouldn't say over the phone, but he seemed to think it was important. Marcus, who'd been monitoring our conversation from his position by the front window, turned around. I'd advise against any unplanned meetings, he said. Joey's harmless, my father said. Been running clean for years now. Still, Marcus continued, better to control the circumstances. If she's going to meet with him, it should be in a public place with security present. What do you think, Daddy? Is it worth the risk? My father considered the question seriously. I think Joey's got something he's been carrying for you for 5 years. Something he didn't want to give to the feds when they were crawling all over everything. Something from before I testified. Something from your last night here. Before you went into protection. My last night in Memphis was a blur of fear and preparation. I'd been told to pack one bag, say goodbye to no one, and be ready to disappear forever. I'd hidden some personal items, letters, photographs, a few pieces of jewelry that had belonged to my grandmother. If Joey had found those items and kept them safe for 5 years, they might be worth the risk of a meeting. Okay, I said, but we do it Marcus's way. Public place, security present. I'll call Joey, my father said. Set something up for tomorrow. As we drove back to our hotel, I tried to process everything that had happened. Seeing my parents again had been emotionally overwhelming, but it had also felt right in a way I hadn't expected. Despite all the years and all the changes, they were still my family. How are you doing? Thaddeus asked, taking my hand, confused, sad, grateful, relieved. I paused. How are you doing? This can't be what you expected when you married me. I expected to marry someone extraordinary, he said. I just didn't realize how extraordinary until now. Most men would be running for the hills by now. Most men didn't get to see you face down my mother in a scarlet dress. Despite everything, I laughed. That feels like it happened in another lifetime. It happened 3 days ago. Like I said, another lifetime. That evening, we had dinner at a barbecue restaurant that Marcus had vetted for security. The food was incredible. Ribs and pulled pork and cornbread that tasted like childhood. But I found it hard to enjoy anything while thinking about my mother lying in that small bedroom, fighting a battle she couldn't win. She's proud of you, Thaddeus said, reading my thoughts. How can you tell? The way she looked at you. The way she introduced me to the neighbor who came by while we were there. This is my daughter and her husband. Not my daughter who testified against her father. Not my daughter who disappeared for 5 years. Just my daughter. That's all she ever wanted for me. A normal life. And now you have one. Well, relatively normal. If you can call flying around in private jets with armed security guards normal. I can't, but I can call it an adventure. The next morning, Marcus arranged for our meeting with Joey Castellano to take place at a busy coffee shop in downtown Memphis. He positioned his team throughout the area and coordinated with Agent Morrison, who was monitoring the situation from a federal building across the street. Joey arrived exactly on time, which surprised me. When I'd known him, punctuality hadn't been one of his strengths. He looked older but healthier than I'd expected. Clean-shaven, nicely dressed, with the kind of tan that comes from legitimate outdoor work. Valentina Rossetti, he said, standing up as I approached his table. Look at you. Joey Castellano. You look good. Clean living. Who knew? He gestured to Thaddeus and Marcus. You traveling with an entourage now? Security precaution. My husband, Thaddeus. Our security consultant, Marcus. Joey shook hands with both men, his manner friendly but respectful. Heard about your wedding on the news. Congratulations. Thank you. My father says you have something for me? Right to business. I like that. He reached into a small gym bag beside his chair and pulled out a wooden jewelry box I recognized immediately. Grandmama's box, I whispered. Found it in your room after the feds tossed the house. Figured you might want it back someday. The box had belonged to my father's mother, who'd died when I was 12. She'd left it to me, along with a few pieces of jewelry inside it. I'd hidden it under my bed the night before I went into witness protection, thinking I'd never see it again. You kept it for 5 years? Your daddy asked me to. Said if you ever came back, you'd want your grandmama's things. I opened the box with trembling fingers. Everything was there. My grandmother's wedding ring, a pair of pearl earrings, a silver locket with my grandfather's picture inside. Items that had seemed so important when I was 18, but that I'd learned to live without. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. There's something else, Joey said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. This came for you about 6 months ago. Addressed to Valentina Rossetti at your daddy's house. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive-looking, with my name written in elegant script. There was no return address. Who delivered it? Came through the mail. Postmark says New York City. I turned the envelope over in my hands, trying to imagine who might be writing to Valentina Rossetti after all these years. Almost everyone who'd known me by that name was either dead, in prison, or had good reason to avoid contact with me. Want me to open it? Thaddeus asked, sensing my hesitation. No, I need to do this. I tore open the envelope carefully. Inside was a single sheet of cream-colored paper with the letterhead of a prestigious New York law firm. Dear Ms. Rossetti, we represent the estate of your great-aunt, Isadora Carmen Rossetti Rodriguez, who passed away on March 15th of this year. According to her will, you are the sole beneficiary of her estate, which includes property, investments, and personal effects valued at approximately $2.3 million. We have been unable to locate you through conventional means, but Ms. Rodriguez was quite specific that this inheritance should go to my great-niece Valentina, no matter what name she's using now or where she's hiding. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss the terms of the bequest. Sincerely, Harrison Matthews Esquire. I read the letter twice, then handed it to Thaddeus. Holy shit, I said, forgetting where I was. Language, baby girl, Joey said with a grin. But yeah, that's what I thought when I read it. Who was Isadora Rodriguez? Thaddeus asked. My grandmother's sister. She moved to New York in the 1960s and married some Cuban musician. We lost touch with her when I was little. Apparently, she kept track of you, Marcus observed. $2.3 million, I said, still trying to process the number. That's a lot of money, Joey said, especially for someone who's already landed on her feet. There was something in his tone that made me look at him more carefully. What do you mean? Just that you'd done real good for yourself. Rich husband, fancy clothes, probably don't need old Isadora's money. Joey, what are you getting at? He leaned back in his chair, and I caught a glimpse of the old Joey, the one who'd always had an angle, always been working some kind of scheme. Just that there's a lot of people in this neighborhood who could use that kind of help. People who didn't get the chance to start over with a new identity and a rich family. Are you asking me for money? I'm asking you to remember where you came from. The words stung because they carried an implied criticism, that I'd forgotten my roots, abandoned my community, chosen comfort over loyalty, but they also made me angry. Remember where I came from? I repeated. Joey, I've spent 5 years trying to forget where I came from. Do you know what it's like to testify against your own father? To watch him get led away in handcuffs because of words that came out of your mouth? I know it wasn't easy. Easy? It destroyed me. For months after I testified, I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't function. The FBI had to put me in therapy because I was having panic attacks every day. But you survived it. Barely. And now you want me to feel guilty for building a life that doesn't involve counting cards and backroom poker games? Joey held up his hands. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm just saying, you're saying I owe something to this neighborhood because I escaped it. But you know what, Joey? This neighborhood never protected me. When my father's gambling debts put us in danger, where was the community then? When I was 15 years old and counting cards because we couldn't afford groceries, where was the support? Your daddy made his own choices, and I made mine. I chose to tell the truth, even though it meant losing everything I'd ever known. I chose to build a new life instead of staying trapped in the old one, and I'm not going to apologize for that. Thaddeus put a gentle hand on my arm, and I realized my voice had been rising. Other customers in the coffee shop were starting to stare. I'm sorry, I said, lowering my voice. This is just a lot to process. I understand, Joey said, and I'm not trying to guilt trip you. I just thought, if you were looking for a way to give back to what? The criminal community that almost got me killed? Give back to the people who are still trapped in it. The kids who are growing up the way you did, thinking they don't have any other options. The words hit me differently this time. I thought about my teenage years, about the choices I'd made because I couldn't see any alternatives, about the girl I'd been before the FBI offered me a way out. What did you have in mind? I asked quietly. Joey smiled, and I could see that he'd been hoping for this question. There's a community center a few blocks from where you grew up. Serves kids from families like yours used to be. They need funding for after-school programs, tutoring, college prep, things that might give these kids a shot at a different life. And you think I should donate Isadora's inheritance to this center? I think you should consider it. Not all of it, maybe, but enough to make a real difference. I looked at Thaddeus, who was watching our exchange with interest but not judgment. What do you think? I asked him. I think it's your decision to make. But I also think your great-aunt might approve of using her money to help kids escape the kind of life you escaped. Marcus checked his watch. We should probably wrap this up soon. Too much time in one location makes me nervous. I stood up, clutching my grandmother's jewelry box and the letter from the New York law firm. Joey, I'll think about what you said, but I need time to process all of this. Fair enough. He stood as well, extending his hand. It was good to see you, Valentina. You turned out real good. Thank you for keeping Grandmama's box safe. Thank you for having the guts to do what you did 5 years ago. Made a lot of people safer. As we walked back to our SUV, I felt like my head was spinning. In the space of 24 hours, I'd reconciled with my dying mother, inherited millions of dollars from a relative I barely remembered, and been challenged to consider my obligations to the community I'd left behind. How are you holding up? Thaddeus asked once we were safely in the car. I feel like I'm living in a movie. A really confusing movie where I can't tell if it's a drama or a thriller or a comedy. Maybe it's all three. That would explain why I can't predict what's going to happen next. My phone buzzed with a text message. Agent Morrison. Heads up. We've picked up chatter about your presence in Memphis. Nothing threatening, but word is getting around that you're in town. Consider cutting your visit short. I showed the message to Marcus, who immediately got on his radio to check with his team. What kind of chatter? I asked. People talking. Saying Valentina Rossetti is back. Wondering what she's doing here. Speculating about whether she's in some kind of trouble. Dangerous chatter? Not necessarily. But in a community where people have long memories and complicated loyalties, Attention isn't always a good thing. I thought about my mother, lying in that small bedroom, waiting for me to visit again. I thought about the promise I'd made to come back the next day. One more visit, I said. I need to say goodbye properly. I'd recommend making it quick, Marcus said. Get in, spend time with your mother, get out. What about your father? Thaddeus asked. What about him? Are you going to say goodbye to him too? It was a question I'd been avoiding. My relationship with my father was complicated in ways that my relationship with my mother had never been. He'd loved me, but he'd also put me in danger. He'd been proud of my intelligence, but he'd also exploited it for his illegal activities. Forgiving him felt both necessary and impossible. I don't know, I admitted. You don't have to decide right now, Thaddeus said gently, but you might not get another chance. That evening, we had dinner at our hotel while I tried to sort through my emotions. The inheritance letter sat on the table between us, a reminder that my past wasn't finished with me yet. Tell me about your great aunt, Thaddeus said. I barely remember her. She came to visit once when I was maybe 7 or 8. She seemed so glamorous. All jewelry and perfume and stories about New York. My parents didn't approve of her. Why not? Because she'd married outside the community. Because she'd left Memphis behind and never looked back. Because she represented everything they thought they could never have. Sounds familiar. Yeah, I guess she was my first example of someone who'd escaped. And now she's giving you the means to help other people escape. I picked up the letter again, reading the dollar amount that still seemed unreal. $2.3 million. That's more money than my family saw in their entire lives. What do you want to do with it? I don't know. Part of me wants to keep it. Use it as security for our future. Part of me thinks Joey's right, that I should use it to help kids who are growing up the way I did. And part of you? Part of me thinks I should give some of it to my parents. Make sure my mother's final months are as comfortable as possible. Make sure my father has enough money to stay legitimate. Thaddeus nodded. All good options. You don't have to choose just one. I could split it up. Something for my parents, something for the community center, something for us. Or you could take time to think about it. Make decisions when you're not in the middle of an emotional crisis. Is that what this is? An emotional crisis? Tina, in the past 4 days, you've revealed your secret identity to your husband, been threatened by your mother-in-law, inherited millions of dollars, and reconciled with your dying mother. If that's not an emotional crisis, I don't know what is. He was right. I'd been operating on adrenaline and emotion since our wedding night, making decisions without fully considering their implications. Maybe we should go home, I said. See my mother one more time, then head back to Chicago. If that's what you want. I think it is. I need time to process all of this, and I can't do that here. There are too many ghosts. Thaddeus reached across the table and took my hand. Then we'll go home. We'll figure out the inheritance, decide what to do about the community center, plan how to help your parents, but we'll do it together, when you're ready. The next morning, we went back to my parents' house for what I knew would be my final visit. My mother was having a good day, more alert, less pain, able to sit up in bed and talk for longer periods. I spent 2 hours with her, showing her pictures from our wedding, the edited version, telling her about our plans for the future, listening to her stories about my childhood that I'd forgotten or never known. I have something for you, she said as I was preparing to leave. She reached into the drawer of her bedside table and pulled out a small velvet pouch. What is it? Open it. Inside the pouch was a simple gold wedding band, worn smooth by decades of wear. My wedding ring, she said. I want you to have it. Mama, you should keep it. It means marriage is about love and commitment, and staying together through hard times. You already know those things. Now the ring can remind you. I slipped the ring onto my right hand, where it fit perfectly. It felt warm, as if it carried decades of love and devotion. Thank you, I whispered. Be happy, mija. That's all I want. Be happy. In the hallway, I found my father waiting for me. He looked nervous, uncertain, like he wasn't sure what to say. I'm glad you came, he said finally. I'm glad too. I know things between us. They're complicated. Yeah, they are. I just want you to know, I never blamed you for what you did. You made the right choice. The words I'd been waiting 5 years to hear. Thank you for saying that. I should have said it sooner. Should have said a lot of things sooner. We stood there in the narrow hallway, surrounded by the detritus of our complicated history, and I realized that forgiveness didn't have to be complete to be real. Take care of Mama, I said. I will. And Tina? Yeah? If you ever want to come back, you'll always be welcome here. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was something close to one. And for now, it was enough. On the plane back to Chicago, I called the New York law firm to discuss my great-aunt's inheritance. The process would take several weeks to complete, but the money was definitely mine. I also called the community center Joey had mentioned and spoke to the director about their programs. They were doing good work with limited resources, providing services to kids who reminded me of myself at that age. By the time we landed in Chicago, I'd made my decision. A week later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, signing papers that would distribute Isadora's inheritance 3 ways. $800,000 to establish a fund for my mother's medical care and my father's future security, $1 million to create an endowment for the Memphis Community Center, and $500,000 for Thaddeus and me. You sure about this? The lawyer asked as I signed the final document. I'm sure. It's a lot of money to give away. It's a lot of money to help people with. That evening, Thaddeus and I had dinner with Delphine. Our relationship had settled into something that wasn't quite friendship, but wasn't hostility either. She'd kept her word about supporting our marriage, and I'd kept mine about giving her a chance to know the real me. So, she said over dessert, I heard about your inheritance, and your decision about how to use it. News travels fast in your social circle. It does. And the consensus seems to be that you've made a very gracious choice. I made the right choice for me, which is what gracious people do. She paused. I also heard that you've been contacted by several organizations about serving on their boards. It was true. Word about my background and my inheritance had somehow reached Chicago's charitable community, and I'd received invitations to join the boards of 3 different nonprofit organizations. I'm considering them, I said. Good. You have a perspective that most of us lack. It would be valuable. 6 months later, I was standing in the same Memphis community center where I'd once donated my great-aunt's money, watching a 15-year-old girl named Rosa demonstrate her college application essay to a group of volunteers. Rosa reminded me of myself at that age, smart, ambitious, but limited by circumstances beyond her control. The essay was about her dream of becoming a doctor, despite growing up in a family where no one had ever finished high school. The Isadora Rodriguez Scholarship will pay for your undergraduate education, I told her after she finished reading, but the graduate school scholarship is contingent on maintaining a 3.5 GPA. I can do that, Rosa said with the kind of quiet confidence I recognized. I believe you can. After the ceremony, I walked through the neighborhood where I'd grown up. Many of the houses looked the same, but there were signs of change too. New businesses, renovated storefronts, families who looked like they were finding their way out instead of deeper in. My mother had died 3 months earlier, peacefully in her sleep with my father holding her hand. I'd been there for the funeral, standing in the same church where she'd been married, listening to neighbors share memories of her kindness and strength. My father had handled her death with more grace than I'd expected. He'd used some of the money I'd given him to pay off old debts and start a small legitimate business. Auto repairs that didn't involve hiding stolen cars or laundering money. You did good, baby girl, he told me at the funeral. Real good. Now, as I stood outside the house where I'd learned to count cards and fear for my safety, I realized he was right. I had done good, not just in terms of material success, but in terms of finding a way to honor both where I'd come from and where I was going. My phone buzzed with a text from Thaddeus. How did the scholarship ceremony go? Perfect, I typed back. Just like everything else in our weird, complicated, beautiful life. See you tonight. I love you, Valentina Rossetti Worthington. I smiled at the name he'd started using, a combination of who I'd been and who I'd become. It felt right, like I'd finally found a way to be both people at once. As I walked back to the car where Marcus was waiting, some security habits were hard to break. I thought about the scarlet dress that had started this whole journey. It was hanging in our closet at home, a reminder of the night I decided to stop hiding from who I really was. Great Aunt Isadora had been right. Red was the color of revolution. And sometimes the most important revolution is the one that happens inside yourself. The drive back to the airport took us past my old high school, where a new sign announced the Rossetti Community Garden, another project funded by the Inheritance. Students were working among the vegetables, learning about nutrition and responsibility, and the satisfaction that comes from growing something beautiful. I thought about calling my father to tell him about the garden, about the scholarship recipients, about all the ways his daughter's choice to tell the truth 5 years ago was still creating positive change. But then I decided against it. Some things were better experienced than explained. Instead, I called Thaddeus. I'm ready to come home, I said when he answered. Good, he replied. I'm ready for you to be here. What are we having for dinner? Whatever you want. It's your choice. My choice, I repeated, savoring the words. After 30 years of having choices made for me, by poverty, by fear, by other people's expectations, I'd finally learned to make my own. And that, I thought, as the plane lifted off from Memphis, carrying me back to my chosen life and my chosen family, was the most revolutionary thing of all.